Now, one of the things we try to do in the library these days is to bring you programs of all different types. And if you haven't been to some of our sessions before or received our newsletter, we invite you to sign up for the newsletter at the back of the room there, and we will make sure to keep you informed of all the things going on here at the library. Today's program is called Riding the Waves, and it's the second in a series of programs by this title. The idea behind these programs is to bring together experts from our faculty here at Pepperdine with community practitioners to dialogue on issues of the day, sports, health, entertainment, a whole intellectual inquiry, the whole range of things that we think about on a daily basis. So we're delighted to have a collaborator in this project in the Malibu Chronicle, and we're delighted to have Vera Mahajan with us today, who is the editor of that fine magazine. Vera. And she works very closely with our moderator, Tommy Hawkins. Tommy contributes in a variety of ways to the publication. He writes editorials, and he is a public persona for the magazine, and so we're delighted that he has agreed to be our MC and moderator for today's session and for all of the Riding the Waves sessions going forward. So welcome, Tommy.
Thank you.
Now, aside from his, well, first let me tell you about our lineup. Tommy, as I mentioned, is going to be the MC and moderator of today's conversation, and he's going to tell you more about our guests in a second, who are, to his far right, Holden McRae, who is on our faculty here at Seaver College, and our guest to Tommy's immediate right is Dr. Robert Clapper, physician and host of a show that you'll hear more about in just a second. But I want to tell you a little bit about Tommy for those of you who don't know him. He's really the perfect leader for today's discussion, I think. Some of you may remember his career with the Lakers, or perhaps his time as a VP for the Dodgers organization. However, I'd like to take just a moment to congratulate him now on another period in his athletic history, his time on the Notre Dame basketball team. Now, a couple of weeks ago, Tommy was back in South Bend, Indiana, where he was the lucky 7th basketball player to be inducted into the Ring of Honor at Purcell Pavilion. His jersey, number 20, has now been retired, but I'm told that his extraordinary rebound record, and correct me if I'm wrong on this number, 1,318, is alive and well. So congratulations, Tommy.
Thank you.
And for those of you who haven't seen the Malibu Times today, have a look. There's a really nice piece on his receiving that fine award. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Tommy, to take us away into a conversation which I hope you'll enjoy. And by the way, we're leaving lots of time at the end for, not at the end, but right throughout the conversation for you to interact with our guests today. So Tommy, take it away.
Thank you very much, Mark. I'm a little bit under the weather, and I have about 70% of my voice, so bear with me. I think that we can get through this. Let me tell you just a little bit about riding the waves. I first went to Sam Lagana, and I said, Sam, I need your help because I'd like this program to be instituted at Pepperdine. And so he says, well, you have to see Heidi. And Heidi says, yes, that's great, but you have to talk to Mark, who just introduced me. So Vera and I went to Mark, and Mark says, well, we're interested in doing this, but we're hiring a new lady to be a part of our director of library services and everything, and Jeanette will not be here for 2 weeks, so you got to meet with Jeanette. So we waited and waited, and we visited and we visited and we presented, and we came up with this idea of riding the waves. Riding the waves integrates professionals from Greater Los Angeles with professors at Pepperdine. And the essence of this meeting is as much information as we can impart to you and as much exchange as we can. I am a mere conduit in this situation. I want to connect you to these people, and I want you to hammer the hell out of them and get as much information as you can from them, because they have a warehouse of information that we can all use. So we're talking about community and student interaction with professionals. I was running from my car and I left my notes. So I said, I must prove to the people today that Alzheimer's has not set in yet. And I need to introduce these people. First of all, Harlan McRae, the pride of South Africa, and my daughter's soccer coach a few years ago. Harlan graduated from the University of Cape Town in South Africa. He has been at Pepperdine for 27 years, and his main aim is to bring about a closing of the gap between medical science and physical education. So please welcome Harlan McRae. How to do? And this next guy, he's the Energizer Bunny of medicine. He is the head of orthopedic surgery at Cedars-Sinai. He is also, well, let me tell you, he graduated from Columbia University, but in art history. But he got his medical degree from Columbia University. He did an internship in New York and also with the Kerlan Jobe Center here in Los Angeles. He has a patent on more than 7 orthopedic surgery tools that are used from all over the world. He has written articles in Ladies Home Journal and different publications. He is the host of Weekend Warriors on ESPN Radios, a 2-hour weekend show that he regales you with all of his information. And he is also a sculptor. He goes to Carrara, Italy every year for his vacation, and he works in a stone quarry. It's the same stone quarry that Michelangelo worked in when he was doing his sculpting. Please welcome Dr. Robert Clapper. How to do? All right.
I want to meet that guy.
Okay, you both have microphones, right?
I'm from New York. I don't need a microphone.
You don't need a microphone. I do today. Ordinarily, I will not. What I want you to do, first of all, you are both specialists in your field. Why did you get into it? And what is your aim today in terms of everything that you're doing?
Go ahead.
Some secret society here.
Rock, paper, scissors. What better way to decide who goes first? I played sport growing up, all kinds of sports, and thought I'd become a physical education teacher in the high schools in South Africa. This is in the early 1970s. And had gone through my undergraduate degree in physical education. I was actually an English major as well, so I would probably end up teaching English as well as phys ed in high school. And as I was getting ready to start that teaching, they established a sports science program at the medical school in Cape Town. The same medical school where they performed the first successful heart transplant by Chris Barnard. And that was pretty attractive to me. Being a student is not a bad thing if you think about it. Right? You just need to show up and study hard and have fun. What better way to spend a year at university? But anyway, doing that sports science degree was the first one in Africa, and it was establishing the bridge, as Tommy said, between physical education and medicine. Medical degrees train you to fix people. Physical education degrees train you how to teach people to move and be healthy. But there wasn't really a science connection between the two. So that program, as well as programs in Scandinavia, as well as in the US, were established in order to do that. And I loved it. It was fantastic. And that's essentially what gave me the impetus to come to the United States in 1982. I haven't seen snow, so I wasn't going to Scandinavia. And they spoke English, or a form of English, in the United States. So I thought, well, I'd probably fit in reasonably well here. And yeah, I came to the University of Texas in 1982, did a master's degree there, and then in 1988 went back to the med school in Cape Town to work on my PhD.
Right.
And that got me started in my career. I love teaching, love research, and love applying it into communities. And hopefully helping to make people be better at what they are or what they intend to do, and then secondly, teaching about health and human performance.
Thank you, Harlan. And what about the eclectic Robert Clapper?
So I grew up in New York. This is why I butcher the language. You'll have to put an R on the end of all the words I do. My dad was a carpenter, struggled to make a living, worked a second job in the post office. My mom was a nurse. They had 3 kids, daughters, and were so interested in having a son. So in 1955, they had a little boy. He had a tetralogy of Fallot, same type of heart ailment that Shaun White, the snowboarder, had. But in 2015, there's bypass. So you put the child on bypass, you sew it up, and you can win Olympic champions. But in 1955, there was no bypass machine. So this little boy got to be bluer and bluer, and then died. My parents were devastated. Quickly, they went to have another baby, me. And they violated every rule in psychiatry. I'm named after this baby. And my entire life, I would sit with my dad in his truck going to different job sites, telling me in this beautiful innocence that my father was about this little boy who died. So the whole time I'm sitting there going, Jesus Christ, I had to kill somebody to get here. I mean, why am I the lucky one? And this kid was taken away. So it really started to prey on me of how does the body work? Why was he killed and I'm here? In our society, the only way you learn how the body works is you go to medical school. But I really wanted to be a carpenter, just like him. Even though he couldn't make a living, my mother would like yelling at him constantly. I had an Egyptian taxi cab driver recently in New York, and it drives my wife crazy because I love sitting with the cab driver and finding out all about them as they're taking us wherever. And he told me in Egypt there's an expression, how do you tell a carpenter lives here? And the answer is, because the front door is broken. And that's exactly right. My mother would be, he could fix everybody else's house, how come everything's broken? Anyway, so I really, had a beautiful relationship with my father, and that's what I wanted to do, work with my hands, build things, create things. So my mother one day said to me, so, Mr. Big Shot, you're 11, 12, what are you going to do with your life? I said, I'm going to be a carpenter, just like him. She goes, are you crazy? I got to go to work as a nurse because he can't even make a living here for us. But he's honest, and he's this, and he builds something great. She goes, Rob, do me a favor. First, you should be a doctor. Then you can do whatever you want. Typical Jewish mother. So I have many stories that I can tell, but anyway, this led to me to going, you know what, I would love to know how the body works. Okay, maybe work with my hands. Fortunately, I was never sick, so I didn't know what doctors did. And I was lucky enough, as Tommy says, to be able to not only go to Columbia, but to go there for the medical school. I had no idea what I was really going to be seeing, other than can I work with my hands. And Columbia has this beautiful program when you do, I don't even know if they still have it, but your first year, you have the cadaver. And systematically, they work. First week, the head and the neck. So in walk the ENT surgeon. We take the thyroid out, recurrent laryngeal nerve, we want to avoid, blah, blah, blah. As you're doing this basic dissection, they teach you what's relevant. Okay, next week, chest surgeons. In come the lung surgeons, big macho guys. This is how we do lung surgery. And you have this basic cadaver but it was so impressive to me to clinically correlate the dissection. Next week, the abdomen, and you get the picture. 6 weeks into it, in walks Dr. Stinchfield. He was the man who brought hip replacements from England to America. He was a big deal, this guy. The typical, like, Chuck Yeager Southern accent. And so I figured, okay, this is gonna be cool. You know, I didn't know anything about orthopedic surgery, never was sick. And his first case he presents is a woman who's born without a socket for her ball and socket joint. So he has to build one. So he puts up x-rays, he brought the patient, I'm going, this is, oh my God. Yes, I was so energized that I get to be a carpenter. And in the end, that's what I am.
Incredible story. Incredible story. Thank you, both of you. Now, when you look at all of these people out here, and we have students, we have senior citizens, we have middle-aged people.
You're all pre-op or post-op, that's what you're all.
We have old-timers. What physically can you say to them about what they should know about themselves? Because what applies to Vera would not apply to Michael, or would not apply to Kevin, or any of these students. So we have to look at life and its physicality in terms of age groupings. How do you do that?
This time I'm going first.
Funny I should ask that, right?
I didn't know really what I would bring, but a picture's worth 1,000 words. I don't even know if you can get these anymore, but this is actually a real bone. This is from a skeleton. Now they're made of plastic. And it's chipped, which is actually quite nice because the top of the braided trochanter is knocked off. And I want you all to get a chance to look at the miracle. Whether you believe in God or not, this is a good place to actually say that we believe in God, but not most doctors don't, but I do. You will appreciate how incredible it is that you walk on something that some of you with osteoporosis, the older women in the audience, tomorrow I do 15 surgeries a week. Tomorrow I'll be doing 6 of them. 2 hip replacements, 4 knee replacements. Some of those patients will be 85 or 90, some of them are 35. Some of them are so osteoporotic that when I take the cartilage off the top of their knee, I literally can take my little finger and push into the cancellous bone. Yet, it can support a 120-pound person. So the structure that you have is amazing. So I brought you to talk about variation. This is a typical person's hip, femoral head and neck. Look at the size of it. In the middle 90s, I had the good fortune of taking care of Wilt Chamberlain. I did his hip surgery. He was 7'1", and the prosthesis I would use is not on the shelf of small, medium, and large. So I had the genius idea, and he was up for it, of taking a CAT scan, which is a 3-dimensional X-ray of Wilt's pelvis and hip, so that I can send it true size to Indiana to build a prosthesis. So it's called CAD-CAM, Computer Assistant Design, Computer Assistant Model, CAD-CAM. This is Wilt Chamberlain's hip. Look at this one, put this one up.
Whoa.
Look at the difference, okay? About 2 months ago, I had the good fortune of seeing an actor. He's in one of the movies you've seen, but he's this big. He's a dwarf. And can't walk anymore after years and years. And he came to me, literally 3 feet something. There's no size for his prosthesis. So he said, okay, I've been down this road before. I'm going to send you for a CAT scan. And I'm going to send it to Indiana where they have a CAD camera. And I'm going to have them build your hip so that I can create a prosthesis with all the twists and turns that will customize, fit, and be perfect for you. And this is his hip. So look at the difference. You talk about,
Whoa.
see this room. This is Wilt, and this is his. Appreciate the angle of the ball to the neck, to the shaft. Appreciate that his ball is sunken further down. And all the spurs and osteophytes, look at how banged up this is, walking on this for his whole life, making a beautiful career in Hollywood. But now he can't walk anymore. Now I'm happy to tell you, you'll be seeing him again, because now he has a hip that he hasn't had in years. So this is the variation. So the one thing that is absolutely consistent with all of you is pain. And our society, the damn drug companies, like the oil companies, like all the whatever, don't get me started. But pain is actually something we should embrace and not just mask with cortisone shots and pills and all. That's the unique thing that each and every one of you have, that something's not right. You can use a man of his talents, so you don't need a man of my talents, for sure, beforehand. But the key is, get rid of the pain because you're getting rid of the problem. Don't give someone who's coughing Robitussin. If they got pneumonia, they need antibiotics to stop coughing, not Robitussin. But we are plagued in our society of give me a pill, make it stop, get rid of the symptoms now. Do you know how many patients I have who take Advil to go to the gym? Are you kidding me? Then you wonder why you're 35 and now have to do a hip replacement on you. So the bottom line is use the pain, which is a beautiful way to individualize each and every one of you. And that should be your challenge of how to get better, to get rid of the pain holistically.
Harlan, that's incredible. I played with Will Chamberlain, and he kneed me a couple of times at
Good, you got revenge.
the yeah. So I got to see what I was really up against.
That's right.
Harlan, this bridging of the gap that you're seeking, what is that all about, and what don't we as potential patients understand about this gap, and how can we bridge it?
So what we like to do in our area is talk about prevention, to prevent or slow down the need or decrease the need of every American to see Dr. Clapper or other doctors. So we talk about things like appropriate nutrition. So if we're talking about osteoporotic hips, do you need to be concerned about that as a postmenopausal woman, a woman over the age of 52, or should you be concerned about it if you have a daughter who's 10 years old? And the answer is you should be concerned about it if you have a 10-year-old daughter, or maybe even a 6-year-old daughter, because laying down appropriate bone mineral density starts at that age. It's not a starting point when you're 40 or 50 years old. That's a little bit late to start being concerned about it. So in our area, we talk about, well, what does that look like? What does it look like with regard to nutrition? What does it look like with regard to appropriate physical activity? What kind of loading should you be imposing on the bone in order to have it mineralized correctly? What may be some issues that you might have to deal with as you get older that could cause regression of bone mineral density? What kinds of potential drugs, over-the-counter drugs or pharmaceuticals, as Dr. Clapper talked about, and also accelerate aging of the bone. So that's the analogy that we're talking about bridging. We talk to our students. I see a couple of them in here. They can probably give you more pointers on it. But for them who are interested in going into medicine, what kind of proactive things can they do with their patients or the families that they deal with if they work in family medicine to try and delay, we call it compression of morbidity. The average American spends the last 13 years of his or her life in a diseased or disabled state, and it's very costly to be in that place. So we try to compress morbidity, reduce the amount of time you can spend in a diseased or disabled state. And that's really, what it really comes down to is the lifestyle choices you make. And those are nutrition, physical activity, they relate to community and social things as well, psychological health, there are a whole host of factors. But the two primary building blocks that sustain that compression They are the two key elements.
Okay, Harlan, we haven't listened to you. We have gotten older. We are limping. We no longer can dunk. We have pain. We're taking Advil. We're taking Motrin or whatever else. And we get to the point that we go to Dr. Clapper. And we say, Dr. Clapper, you got to do something. Can you help me? Do I need surgery? What is the decision making that we go through to decide whether we need to go under the knife or not? Because a lot of people will say, don't have back surgery, don't have done this to you. Take this pill and you're going to be fine. Help me out here.
I used to think that the criminal mind, God made good, made evil, that the evil ones went into real estate. That they went into business, they went into those areas. But the beautiful world of medicine, those bright eyes that I've always had watching the world through the eyes of a nurse, my mother, to care for people, to take care of people. So if you go into medicine, you're with the people who look to help society. Guess what? The same son of bitch criminals that, so you have to be very careful. There are people who take advantage of that beautiful profession who will do anything to biopsy your wallet. And I don't mean to come off as being this way, but I have become hard after 26 years of being a surgeon in Los Angeles. And you'll see it now. Wear a sleeve with copper in it, you see on television. Like this is gonna... There was a time when people went to the shoe store to buy shoes, and they said, hey, this is a better gimmick, we can take an x-ray of your foot, right? Tom McCann used to do this, a fluoroscopy of your foot. And people would say, can this hurt you? No, it's invisible. Thank you, they're radiating your foot to do this. Don't kid yourself. This, people, they treated acne. How could it hurt you? It's invisible. You got to be careful. When it sounds too good to be true, it is. So, with that being said, you better ask the right questions. You always want to try to avoid surgery. And you're all intelligent. So if someone says something and it sounds too good to be true, take glucosamine and you're going to grow cartilage. Or take Synvisc and you're going to lubricate the joint. Trust me. The hair on my head is not coming back again with a shampoo. The dentist still has to take your tooth out and pull it. So there are two reasons for you to know it is time that conservative treatment has failed. And I've written books. I wrote one of them here today. Heal Your Hips, Heal Your Knees. About water exercises. This brilliant idea of making your weight-bearing joints, of your lower back, your hips, your knees, your ankles, weightless. Belly button high water. Simple. You just walk across, get to the end, and backwards. Yes, mechanically you're unloading the joint, and the resistance on the muscle makes you stronger. So you have a better shock absorber above your knee, above your hip, above your back. But it works so well, there's got to be more to it. So think about this. Inside your knee right now, when you close your eyes, each of you, straighten and bend your knee. Your brain knows you straightened and bent your knee, even though your eyes are closed. That is because inside your tendon, your ACL and your posterior cruciate ligament, is a sensor called a Golgi tendon. That is the receptor to your brain of position sense, proprioception. When you become arthritic or you injure your ligament, slow, steady degeneration, guess what you lose? You lose the Golgi tendon. It gets deteriorated. So I have all these very realistic patients. Tommy, for example, come to my office wearing a crappy JCPenney sleeve, going, I know, Dr. Clapper, this doesn't do anything, but it makes my knee feel more secure. Are you kidding me? How the hell can a simple sleeve with no hinges, no nothing, make you feel more secure? But there is a very elegant answer. In your skin are receptors, proprioception, different than the Golgi tendon. And the very fact that you have a sleeve touching your skin, now the brain can once again give position sense so it feels more secure. This is also what I believe the water does, because your skin is touching the water. So, to finally, the two reasons you now say it's time for surgery, and we can get into the miracles of what we can do in the operating room. The pain is failing conservative treatment. And I don't mean noise. Joints that make noise, don't worry about it. Pain, swelling, limited motion, more symptoms in your hip, waking you up from a deep sleep. Your knee, you can't now. That's one reason, more symptoms in that joint. Second reason, if now your back hurts because of your awkward gait, because of your bad knee, your bad hip, and you start screwing up innocent bystanders, particularly backs. I don't care who the surgeon is. We don't do a good job of spine surgery. We're good at knees, we're good at hips, we're good at shoulders. If you start screwing up innocent bystanders, then it's also time for surgery.
Okay. I hope that what you have heard has whet your appetite. As I said at the beginning of the program, this is your program. This is a chance for you to get information, and you don't have to get out your Medicare card to get a proper professional response. You have questions, you have ailments, you have uncles and aunts and grandfathers who have ailments. What say you? What are your questions to Harlan or to Robert? Oh, good.
My question, I was just wondering about those shots on the knee, or like
Nonsense.
nonsense.
They are another way of quieting down the symptoms. They are billed as lubricating the joint. There's no lubrication. They're not growing cartilage. You get one set of teeth, you get one set of articular cartilage. People do them because as a surgeon, I can make more money doing shots all day long than actually telling people to get into the pool, of which you make no money doing. But you know what? The softest pillow to sleep on at night is a clear conscience. But not everybody does.
So you recommend even for like the tendons are all gone or the cartilage is all gone to do
Pool exercises for, and it won't be better in 2 weeks. Give it a month, give it a couple of months. And here's the beautiful thing. In business, win-win. So what's the win-win? Win number one, you will either postpone or avoid the surgery, which is a win. Or 3 months later, Dr. Clapper, I'm better, but damn it, I'm still waking up, it's still killing me. I need to talk to you about surgery. You've now made the muscle stronger, so the recovery from the surgery is going to be easier. You don't lose. No side effects. The thing is fortunately more and more communities are recognizing the value of the pool, so it used to be hard to send someone. YMCA's, 24-hour fitness, you'll know more about this, thanks to this kind of work that you're doing to educate people, to build in the community aquatic centers. This is the key. Fountain of youth is in the fountain.
Yes, sir.
Well, I feel like a total schmuck. I just had 5 shots in the last month. I do feel better. So I've been told I need a knee replacement, and I'm told that wait as long as you can because the technology will get only better and better. So what is the technology today, and what does it look like 5 years from now, do you think?
All right, I don't know if this will project, but this is a video of a patient of mine from November. She lives, it's on our website, so I can hit this.
It is November 13th, one day after my knee surgery, and I'm on my first bike ride.
This is the next day. Look at her. See that? This is in Hidden Hills. She went home. She fought with me. She wanted to leave the same day. Now, she's intense, but so are you. The bottom line is the advances are huge. We don't cut the muscles anymore. So you make your incision, you don't cut. We always taught you how to cut the tendon. Now, you spread the muscle. When you get in, you're resurfacing the end of the bone. You're not chopping out the bone. Anesthesia has improved. They do regional anesthesia now where you don't feel any pain, but the motor function's still there. It used to take people 6 weeks before you can bend to 90 degrees. Now, the afternoon of the operation, they are. Now there's a drug we use from Canada called TXA. And what it does is, so it's been around a long time. We know the side effects, which are very few. But it allows whatever bleeding occurred during the surgery to clot immediately. So there's less bleeding, less swelling in the joint, therefore less pain. So big advances. I don't want to steal the thunder. Ask Harlan a question.
You got a question for Harlan?
I do.
Yes, please. Go right ahead.
You both were excellent, by the way. Very enlightening. Dr. McCrae, you mentioned the two aspects of taking care of ourselves and starting with nutrition and exercise. Can you enlighten us about some details of that? In other words, what is, we're all individuals. How do we find out? Okay, what is the good nutrition? How do we determine what's good exercise for us? Give us some guideposts on that.
Don't listen to the American Dietetics Association or the U.S. Department of Agriculture. You know, in the 1960s, George Butts was Richard Nixon's agriculture secretary, and he gave money to the farmers in the Midwest to plant wheat and corn products, fence line to fence line, but they had no market to sell their product into. And so in 1977, George McGovern had a U.S. Senate Select Committee, and they wrote the first nutritional guidelines for the United States, and that's where your food pyramid came from. 6 to 10 servings of grains, breads, wheat products, cereals, at the very bottom of the pyramid, and reduce the amount of fat intake in the diet, saturated fat. So we've had this lipophobia that's occurred in the United States and around Western world, down into Australia and New Zealand as well, for the last 50 plus years. And when those guidelines came out, within about 3 or 4 years after that, obesity and diabetes type 2 rates started skyrocketing. And there was no evidence, no good scientific evidence to support the move away from fat in your diet. Good fats, bacon, eggs, avocados, nuts and seed oils, things like that.
You said bacon and eggs.
As much as you need. I mean, go back and look at what your grandparents were eating. And were they overweight? Were they developing type 2 diabetes? Those are very new chronic conditions. They didn't exist very much prior to the early 1990s. So what I'd say out of all of that is most of the chronic diseases in the U.S. are inflammatory diseases of inflammation. Heart disease, diabetes, cancers, most of the cancers are inflammatory, and Alzheimer's as well, which a lot of us as we get older are concerned about. Well, what causes the most inflammation in your body? What kind of food? Sugars. Right? Where are the sugars coming from? If you buy any food product, manufactured product, on the shelves, in the grocery store, read the food label, you'll see things like corn syrup, maltodextrins, cane syrup, whatever. They've added sugar to the food supply because they needed a market to sell the product in. And so one thing I would say that you can change very quickly that would have a tremendous impact on your diet is to reduce your added sugar intake in your diet. You know, a can of Coke has 9 teaspoons of sugar in it. Would you ever put 9 teaspoons of sugar in your tea or in your coffee or any other drink that you consume, yet you pick up a can of Coke and just down it? Or Gatorade, a small Gatorade that you give to kids, right? Because, oh, you need to drink Gatorade because it has electrolytes in it and glucose, and you need to replace those if you exercise. 10 teaspoons of sugar. Wow. It's insanity. Wow. And so now, as we get older, if we are going to be impacted by these major chronic conditions, which we are, right? Leading cause of death for people over the age of 25 in the United States is heart disease or cardiovascular diseases. It's all going to get us that or cancer. And both of those diseases are inflammatory diseases. And we get most of our information through our diet. That's where most of it is generated, and or through a insufficient amount of physical activity. And it's, to a certain extent, reversible. That's the good news. They've shown some very good data on autopsy studies, for example, that you can reverse some of the inflammatory consequences of an inactive lifestyle and or a very poor diet. And by poor diet, what we're talking about is this large amount of sugar that we get in our diet. So that's my short answer. But kind of linked to that is culture and economics. You know, so when we're talking about surgeries, if you go to, I don't like calling it a third world country, it's call them emerging economies. How many of those people who live in those cultures need hip replacements, knee replacements? Probably a very tiny percentage, right? So our culture in the US has this expectation that you need to have a surgery to fix something. And then it comes down to economics as well, right? Because there's money to be made doing that, just as there is in the nutrition industry. There are 10 companies in the world that manufacture or produce all the manufactured foods that we eat. 10. Every single food you find on the grocery shelf in any country in the world is the product of one of 10 companies. They're not in business not to make money. They're in business to sell product because they need to satisfy their shareholders. So it's again, be like the pharmaceutical industry. They statin drugs, for example. One of the least effective drugs on the market. It helps one person in 140 who are treated. And it makes $1 billion a day for the companies that manufacture the drug. 1 in 140. If you gave ibuprofen to someone because they have muscle aches or they have some kind of discomfort, pain, as Dr. Clapper was saying, probably 98 out of 100 would get relief, right? If you gave 100 people ibuprofen for pain, 98 out of 100 would benefit. Why would you give a statin drug if only one person in 140 benefits from that drug? So again, the science is being corrupted, and the public is not informed enough to know the difference between what works and what doesn't work. So that's the side I work on. That's the area of interest I have. Is trying to, through discovery of what we know from science, is this real or is it actually junk science that we see? And then having my students think through those processes and saying, you know what, I don't really believe what I'm hearing. Say no to everything you hear and then go and try and see if you can falsify the information you see. That's what good science does. Falsification. No, I don't believe that. And then ultimately you'll find out if it's believable or if it's not believable. That's what you need to do.
Okay, I will take your question in just a second, but you've scared the hell out of all of us.
No, you
So my
eggs and bacon.
I know this
guy. Every day.
I've missed my bacon. Who do we trust, and how do we trust?
Okay, let me ask you a question.
Please.
I started doing the Weekend Warrior show on ESPN with Coach Dave Miller.
Yes.
Now he's on TV, and I love the guy.
Okay.
Every time I would talk about the great coaches, the great, beautiful sports world that we all love,
Yes.
he would smack me on the side of the head and go, "You live in a different world, Clapper." Yes, John Wooden was this beautiful guy, had the pyramid, the whole bit, but there was this guy named Sam Gilbert who was buying everyone a car at UCLA. Then he would tell me a story about Coach K, and this, every time I try to say, but what about this guy? He would tell me how it worked. The athlete did not ever have to admit that they got paid to be recruited. The way it would work, the coach would say, you got to tell us if this really happens, and this was like, I've lost faith here, I can tell you how to lose faith in surgery, and you'll have to tell us how the sports work. But he told me, the deal was you would tell the player, come to my office at 3 o'clock. You'd leave out 5 $100 bills on the desk, and when the player came at 3 o'clock, the coach wasn't there, but there was his airline ticket essentially to go home or whatever it was, and there was no record of it. This is what happened with Jay Mayo, actually, the $1,000 that the guy got. So when you were being recruited,
Yes.
tell us what life was like in those days. Or should we not trust what we're seeing on television with college sports?
No, it's interesting that you bring this up.
Thank you.
Because I was just back at Notre Dame with my teammates
There you go.
from 50 years ago. Sam Gilbert was a personal friend of mine.
Okay.
Sam Gilbert and I used to have lunch frequently at the Fireside Inn on Ventura Boulevard. Sam Gilbert was this way. Sam Gilbert looked at himself as the necessary go-between between a lower socioeconomic athlete and the college. Sam Gilbert once told me, Tommy, we go back every year for our trip to Chicago and to South Bend. Some of these guys don't even have an overcoat. Some of these guys haven't ever been out of their neighborhood except to go and play to an away game. The school is not going to buy them any clothes. Their parents can't afford to buy them any clothes. And I can. So when they get on that plane, they have a parka, or they have an overcoat, or they have gloves and everything.
But do you think that unfairly influences a school that can give a nicer overcoat or a nice, I mean, they obviously need, the system is broken the way it is, but the way it's set up now, when Cam Newton's father, a minister, said, we went to Auburn because Mississippi only was going to give us $150,000.
Yeah.
I mean, at some point, there is a dark side to sports, right?
Oh, definitely, definitely.
Who do you trust them?
All right, well, it's very difficult. I will give you an example, and you will not believe this. I was a freshman. My roommate was Eugene Raymond Patrick Duffy, a red-haired, green-eyed Irishman, and we were asked, are you going to sell programs before the football games? He said, hell no. Sell programs before football. We're scholarship basketball players. Why the hell should we want to sell programs? So our advisor from the dark side said, get as many programs as you can, put them underneath the big Greyhound bus so that you don't have to go back and replenish yourself. Wear your freshman letter numerals and sell the programs. So we started to sell the programs. We were freshmen, we're 18 years old. And this is Notre Dame, right? And so we'd sell the programs. Programs then you could buy for 50 cents, $1. Guy says, I'll have 4 programs, give you $20 and say, keep the change. Keep the change, Jesus Christ. So we'd stuff it. Then we square up with the guy who supplied the programs, and we went back to the room to count the money. And we said, holy cow, right? Now, the coaches knew nothing about that. And the guy from the dark side, who was also a Notre Dame athlete, whose name will not be mentioned, will ask us if we were going to sell programs next weekend. And we said, we darn right we are. So there is that dark side.
In everything is the answer.
In everything, whether it's sports, pharmaceuticals, whatever you mention, there's going to be that dark side.
So how do you tell you're in the, well, I won't ask how old you are, but you're an elder now. How?
Real elder. Yes.
Do you have a trick for us of what you can ask a waiter, a doctor, a teacher, a person, and get a sense that they're being honest with you?
Okay. Yes. Okay. This is my neighbor, Mike Ferris. And we go to dinner, we try to go to dinner at least once every 2 weeks, and we pick different restaurants. And Mike doesn't bite his tongue about anything. How is this? What are your specials? What have you tried? You've got to ask the right questions, and you've got to dig in. That's why I wanted you here. That's why I wanted Harlan here, so that you could, like the old Paul Harvey, get the rest of the story. What you see isn't always what you get. So what is the reality? So that's where I'm coming from here. How do we teach these people who are here to get to the reality and get away from the copper sleeves and all of these other things that you're doing nothing but lining someone's pocket that's not going to do a damn thing to help you?
Now, there's also 3 words you should always have in your vocabulary. Follow the money. Follow the money.
Explain.
Well, why are the drug companies so successful? Why are they making so much money? And that's why I said statins are a good example, right? It's one of the larger, lipid regulators are one of the largest selling drugs in the world. But are they effective? Right, those people are making a lot of money. What science has been suppressed? Just as we found out with nutrition, right? They vilified the scientists who said, you making a big mistake, you doing an experiment on the American people for which you have no evidence to perform the experiment, right? And that experiment's been going now, and look at the consequences, right, of changing the food supply. We're experiencing the consequences of that. There was money involved in that, right? Because it went to the corn farmers initially, it went to the wheat farmers, but then the big food companies got involved. So follow the money. Find out who's making money on it and what's happened to the science behind it. Then you find out if it's real, if it's effective or not.
Do we believe the nutritional facts that are stated on the boxes of cereal or oatmeal and the rest of, in terms of fat content, cholesterol and all of those things? Is that is that the opiate of the people, or is there truth there?
Well, they're supposed to meet federal guidelines, right? So it's supposed to be accurate. What I would be really concerned about if I was anyone in the room would be supplements. Supplements.
Vitamin D added, vitamin A, vitamin C.
Any supplement that you take, including glucosamine, things like that, because the major manufacturing facilities are in Utah for those supplements, and they run their contamination issues with they'll run a drug, let's say they might run a creatine monohydrate supplement in their processing, and then some other company has paid to run their supplement through that same processing sequence, but they don't clean any of the manufacturing tools, and so you get cross-contamination. So we have an athletic trainer here, and you'll find in sport there are a whole list of banned substances, things that you cannot take as an athlete if you're violating drug rules for sport. And a lot of these supplements that are on the market actually have substances that violate those controls, those doping controls. So you think you might be taking a vitamin C supplement, but it could be cross-contaminated with something on the can list, because there's no oversight. The FDA doesn't oversee supplements. You can create a supplement and manufacture and market it with no FDA approval at all, because it's not considered a drug. So
that is scary. Yes, ma'am.
I'd just like to refer back to the question about shots, because it was very general. And so I'd just like to know your thoughts specifically about regenerative medicine. And I've been a as opposed to, say, cortisone. So I wonder if you could address those specifically.
So the reason Kobe Bryant keeps going to Germany, you say, so why is he going to Germany? Andrew Bynum had to retire from this shot. Dwayne Wade is still not 100%, and now look at Kobe. Dirk Nowitzki is from Germany with a bad knee, and he doesn't even go to Germany. But why do you have to go there? Because the FDA in this country will not let us incubate blood. So it is your blood, but it's being manipulated. The whole idea of stem cells is very exciting. So in Europe, they began, because they don't have an FDA, embryonic stem cells. They're now no longer used because they've been associated with cancer. So I always think about the Wright brothers. The Wright brothers, at the turn of the last century, were the first to fly. At least that's what we're told. But in fact, they weren't. There was a French guy and there was a German guy who actually flew. The French guy and the German guy died because they couldn't land. So flying was not a problem. And these guys in Dayton, Ohio, did not want to die. So what they realized is landing is the key, not just flying. So they built a wind tunnel so they could make prototypes before they made their flyer, and they could successfully fly and land. That's stem cells. We have no problem making cells grow. The problem is, do they stop growing? And that's what embryonic stem cells were. And when you think about defects in cartilage for arthritis, think of, here's a clapper vision for you, think of the road that now has a pothole. When the city hires the guy to take a shovel and fill the hole, he has three choices. He could either put enough of the asphalt into the hole that doesn't quite get to it, so you still have a bump, but less of a bump. He can perfectly, with a leveler, make it exactly the way the rest of the road is, which is perfect, no more bump. Or he can be sloppy again and put too much and now you have a bump. What is telling the cell to stop there? You may be trading a hole for a bump. You are manipulating the cell. And I have seen too often where the drug companies come to my office. Dr. Clapper, you like to ski? Can we send you to this meeting? It is so crooked. My patents, the tools that I like to make are instruments. I don't want to design an implant, because once you do, the conflict of interest goes straight up. But I like making the operations easier, so I love tools. In summary, you're smart. If it sounds too good to be true, it is. He had 5 shots, because it is. I'll tell you one other story. If I take out of a jar cortisone, it's a liquid, pull it up with a syringe and a needle, take some alcohol, freeze the skin, and inject it, Medicare pays you a certain number of dollars, let's say $50. One day, the drug company came to these injections and said, Dr. Clapper, wink, wink, there's a code for the injection. I said, why is there a code for the injection? Because we got it licensed that even though it's a liquid, just like cortisone, but technically it's an implant. You're implanting something into the knee joint, not just injecting a liquid, and it's a liquid. If you use this code, you get $150. Now you tell that to a doctor who's got to pay rent and malpractice insurance and his overhead, no, thank you, suddenly, are you kidding me? I mean, I would love one of your students to be a whistleblower because you could make billions of dollars. This is ridiculous. But, you know, who are you going to tell? Who do you complain to? You know, the fox is in charge of the hen house. So I don't mean to make it dark and dreary. There are beautiful doctors doing the right thing. But in the end, do your homework. Try to avoid all this stuff. Be smart. When you have pain, she can go to the gym and do X, Y, and Z in the gym. She don't have pain, she can get away with it. You do the same thing with your trainer and it hurts, you should stop. 85% of human beings have the tip of the shoulder, the acromion, parallel to the floor. That means the rotator cuff that lives underneath, in 85% of us, when you go to the gym and do overhead activities when you're 25, no pain. But 15% of the population are born where the acromion is downsloped. You're just born that way. That means there's less room for the rotator cuff. So if you get a tiny little spur or whatever, you're at risk for digging into the rotator cuff, like Kobe Bryant's rotator cuff tear. So if you go to the gym and do overhead stuff, and the trainer says, no pain, no gain, keep going, don't be a wuss, you are hurting yourself with exercise, not helping yourself. So I've written 2 books, Heal Your Hips, Heal Your Knees, about water exercises. The next book I would like to write with you is called Stop Exercising, You're Killing Yourself.
Yes, ma'am.
So, my question pertains to all of it, and to both of you. I'm going to be a spokesperson for the middle school age. I feel like it's important to get this information to them, so, you know, they can be prepared, because at that age they start making their own choices, they start forming their own habits. And what I've seen, of course, my son is a competitive surfer, and most of his friends are either playing a lot of soccer or on a club team, or, you know, maybe a dancer, or, you know, kids are starting to do a lot more with sports these days. They're pushing the limits. So I think it's also important to create something for them that they can use at this age, because they're really starting to, it's becoming important. Have you thought about maybe creating a kids series of your books that, you know, for instance, you could create like one book that is specifically for soccer, kids starting out in soccer. What exercises might be good for them? Kids who are focusing on surfing, exercises that might be good for them, that might appeal to them to pick up and say, hey, this is fun to read, I like this. You know, I'm not going to pay attention to PE class, but I might pay attention to these books.
I want to hear what Harlan has to say, but I'm just going to say one thing. I had a guest on my show, Tony Gonzalez. He's the tight end for, most recently, the Atlanta
Hawks.
Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
He played 16 seasons. He missed 1 game for injury. Never had surgery. No. He was so happy. So I couldn't wait to have him on the radio. I interviewed him. I said, Tony, it's unbelievable. You're retiring. You missed 1 game. How is that possible with the epidemic of injuries that we see now, without contact even tearing your ACL? And he said, when the football season was over, I played volleyball. I didn't play basketball. You cross-trained. In our society, the little one, college scholarship, how it doesn't matter whether you're a good pitcher or not, it matters how fast you throw. Now you have this pressure to not cross-train, and that is the biggest pollution to taking away the fun of a childhood, and the parent going, well, if you're not going to persist with your basketball, you ain't getting a scholarship, and I can't afford to send you to college, so you better get a scholarship. So cross-training is the most special advice you can give a parent with a middle school kid is, as Woody Allen said, those who can't do, teach. Those who can't teach, teach gym. Don't listen to the coach.
Right. Okay.
Have you thought about, I mean, creating something for kids to teach them also about nutrition, or, you know, what you would suggest?
Let us do this. Let us be the genesis, if you will, of a cooperative project between you, Harlan, and you, Robert Clapper, in terms of what is reality in terms of understanding yourself and understand medical practices today. Could we ask you to think about doing that, collaborating?
It would be my pleasure. Yeah. Absolutely.
Whoa.
Can I just answer her question?
Sure, go ahead.
I would say most kids need to play a variety of sports because, and if they enjoy playing a particular sport at a young age, I would still take the pressure off them from doing that. In European professional soccer, there is no winning and losing until you're 15 or 16 years of age. So even though those kids are playing that one sport, they don't keep score. They don't play matches. There's no competition. We're crazy in this country. We're putting kids at 7, 8, 9, 10 years of age, and it's all about winning, and it's not about playing. And so they get turned off from movement.
The problem is that's why we took them out of soccer, and I see a lot of people doing that because it's so intense.
It's too intense.
Then the kids don't want to do it anymore.
No,
And so
absolutely.
we
But
create-
why are we so crazy as parents to put all that pressure on our kids?
But that's
It's
how it's
insanity.
designed, and now there's no.
But it's us. It's not
Follow
the
the money.
kids.
It is appearance. Let me say this.
Follow the money.
Let me give you this statistic. Less than 1/2 of 1% of every kid who aspires to become a professional will realize that goal. So we're preaching some really bad stuff to a whole population of young people who should be enjoying themselves, but they're thinking about, how can I get better to be a professional? You're not going to get there. You're not going to get there. Yes, sir.
On her subject, I think the seminal book on that is Sports and Society. I don't know if they have 11, 12 editions by Jay Coakley. It deals directly with those controversies. I think I saw on Sports 60 Minutes. He was on there being interviewed about coaches who want the parents to have their kids focus just on one sport. And then, of course, they interview the orthopedic surgeons that see those students that are on scholarship or they promise scholarships or trying to get to us, all this scholarship stuff. And so I think that's the what we would look at.
You have a better chance of getting an academic scholarship if you're a good student than you are getting
A full sports scholarship.
And one more thing, Dr. Clapper had one of the best surgeons in the country, Dr. Neil Al-Trashik, and I was so glad to hear, while you were interviewing him, that somebody, things like he finally spoke up and said about avoiding singular focus in sport, where he said the best athletes, the most elite athletes that he sees, the ones who make it to pro sports, are the ones who cross who variety of sports, not the ones who just do one.
Yeah. No, that's the answer. And one other thing I'll tell you biologically, science behind it. In a young kid who's grown, so there's only two ways in the body and in life that growth occurs. You either make more houses in the community, or you make the houses that you have bigger. Cells are the same way. For cells to make something bigger, to grow, either the cell divides, and then those two cells divide, and that's called hyperplasia. So a young kid who's growing is getting bigger because the cells that they have are dividing to make more cells, so that's why you go from a little one to a big one. Once you're skeletally mature, you have the number of cells that you are. I'm not going to grow anymore. So the way I get bigger is I hypertrophy. The very cells that I have get bigger. So if a child is already obese, they have more cells than a kid who isn't obese. So it's harder for them later in life to lose the weight because you're asking more cells to be more efficient. And that is why it's important to nip it truly in the bud, because if you try to work on it afterwards, losing weight as an adult is way harder than working on it as a child.
Are there any other questions? Yes, sir.
Are there ever benefits for cortisone?
Yes.
And if not,
There's a benefit for cortisone. When your daughter's getting married, you want to walk down the aisle, I'll give you a cortisone shot. When you want to go see the David in Florence, you've never been to Italy before, I'm going to give you a cortisone shot. But to give it as treatment is stupid because it is toxic. It's like meat tenderizer on articular cartilage. And it truly kills everything. So it kills the inflammation. But it doesn't have a switch on it to stop. Now it starts killing everything else that's in there, which is the good stuff. So stay away.
Question on that, because of that, my mom had knee problems and she was given cortisone shots all the time.
Right.
And then she had those other shots, that the gel stuff, that didn't work like not even a week. And now she just had a surgery Monday, and that's what her doctor said, the bone is so soft. So now we're wondering.
Cool exercise. Not too late. Post-op. There's the book. Heal Your Knees.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
I have a nutritional question. We're hearing so much about gluten-free, and for celiac, I guess that would be an important thing. But it's being put out there lifestyle for information.
The best pizza in New York is high gluten flour. It's chewy, it's delicious.
I agree.
You don't want to eat pizza if there's no gluten in it.
If you want to read the very best book on nutrition, read The Big Fat Surprise by Nina Teicholz. She's an investigative journalist. It took her 9 years to write the book. It is the best science and best writing on what you should be eating and why. It's not got recipes, but it tells you how you should eat. And why The Big Fat Surprise by Nina Teicholz.
Heidi.
You talked earlier about the liquid fountain, but I'm just wondering your feelings on the frozen fountain. You know, ice, we see it on the commercials. I've used it myself for either recovery or maybe postponing, you know, controlling the pain. Is it really that great? Is it that beneficial? Is it, where does it rank in helping?
So, as Harlan said, the answer to every question of who's nice and who can you trust is follow the money. We learned something today. The other thing I would tell you is, when it comes to healing and medicine and being healthy, follow the blood supply. So when you have a chronic condition, her mother who just had knee surgery, part of the degenerative process is that the sclerosis of the bone, the loss of the cartilage makes the bone stiffer because the bones are banging into each other, squeezing out the blood supply. So in a chronic situation, you want more blood supply to combat that. You reduce heat. Heat for a chronic problem brings vasodilation, brings more blood. But for an acute injury, you would want to use ice because there's too much flow. To quiet the swelling, you want vasoconstriction. So there's a purpose to it, and then you can try alternating the two. But yes, but that's a temporary thing. When I mean the fountain of youth is in the fountain, it's water exercises. Now, access to water, that's great for everybody. You know, people have skin conditions. Who has time to get to the pool 3 days a week? These are the challenges that you have. But if you're desperate and you're not getting better, then you're going to have to make those accommodations, and it will help you holistically.